All right, welcome everyone to our Tuesday, September 6th meeting of the Administration Public Works Committee. We'll start with the first item on the agenda, the roll call.
Okay, Chair Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Clark. Here. Councilmember Edens. Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper. Councilmember Jaxie
Here.
and Councilmember Nyan.
Here.
All right, thank you for that, Carla here. So we have a quorum. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the August 2nd meeting. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes made by Councilmember Farmer? A second made by Councilmember Clark. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, hearing none, the minutes are approved. All right, we'll move on to the next part of our agenda, which is public participation. This will be the opportunity for any speaker cards that have been submitted for public participation to come forward and speak when your name is called. As a reminder, public participation is for 5 minutes, so we ask you to keep that in mind. Otherwise, we'll have to kindly ask you to finish up there. So when you do come up, please state your ward number or if or address. So Carla, you have any cards?
I do. The first card is Lou Salamone.
Okay, I believe these are the ones that, okay, so I will pass these around. Sorry, just need for the record, your address. Sorry, could you just speak it, see if you could speak into that, but. All right, hang on. I'm gonna get that fixed and then we'll give you a chance to start up. It might not be turned on.
Check. I hate microphones. Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'm
Okay.
sorry about that. We'll restart the clock there for you, so.
Okay, so what I'll say is I read the whitetail deer management plan and then I kind of redacted it. I put information in there that the conservation department has not supplied to you. So if you go forward on this plan, a lot of it is under false pretense. The conservation department is not your friend. They are not giving you all the information that's available to you to make an educated decision here. They state facts on managed archery hunt stats. They give you stats of that. That's only a small total of the deer that are killed in West St. Louis County. I think there was like 150 deer killed through the managed hunts and 1,800 in St. Louis County. So they're just giving you information on a small percentage of people that get in through a lottery and go do hunting in some place they're not familiar with. Since you have a proposal from White Buffalo, I want to give you a proposal also. I'll give you more information, but this is like a pilot program, the top page through Suburban Bow Hunters. There's a few things here. The city has hardly any involvement, and your whitetail deer plan says there's a lot of involvement in the city and there's a lot has to be done to make this happen. There already is hunting in the city and other places, your neighbors close to you, where the city hardly manages it. So what's really important here is what I'll do is critical areas we will concentrate on. I looked at the maps and everything. We'll remove 200 deer. That's an estimate that we will remove for you this year if we had help from the city. Now, there's not much involved in the city again. A lot of it's there. Our our proposal is for 50,000. That's 1/3 of the proposal for White Buffalo for your first year for 279 deer or something like that. But if you knew how they operate, more than 60% of the deer they kill are adult males. We kill 85% adult breeding females, which reduces the population a lot quicker than what white buffalo does. That is their Achilles heel. They shoot over bait piles and the big bucks dominate the bait piles. They have to shoot all of them first and hope the next time that they go to that bait pile that they can kill some does. It's a flawed plan, but they say it's exemplary and it really, they kill a lot of deer, but most of them are the male deer. You have hunting in Wildwood currently. A lot of people hunt, it's their heritage. And if you go through with this proposal through White Buffalo, it changes everything. It changes the whole dynamics of everybody that lives in Wildwood, that hunts or has friends that hunts. Now, there's a statement in your thing that says only 3 to 5% of Wildwood residents identify as hunters. Yes, but there's a lot of hunting throughout Wildwood. Even though maybe a few residents hunt, a lot of people hunt in Wildwood, and you're actually taking away their heritage from them if you do this. Now, my plan is a good plan. I know you don't have any money in the budget this year, but my plan is deferred until next year. We could start hunting this year with a little bit of help from the city to acquire spots. We already hunt in Wildwood. We have quite a few spots. The other guys here hunt on their property. And I would fund this through my group. I would finance it throughout the year, pay the guys $100 a deer, which is an incentive. Conservation Department constantly says that they're recreational hunters. They can never accomplish this. Well, they're never stating any of the incentives that we are giving
1 minute remaining.
hunters to do this. If you go to the third page of your report, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages in. I mean, if you read this on your own, I highlighted a lot of areas that is just false. And it's all from the Conservation Department's information. If they would give you information based on what we do in Clarkson Valley, in Chesterfield on 1 acre, in Sunset Hills, and all these other areas, the first year we hunted those cities that had a really bad deer problem, there was a lot of deer that we took out of there. We are the utmost professionals. There is no wounding rates when the guys operate under my operating procedures. And that's another thing that the Conservation Department goes back to. Wounding rates. No, there's no wounding rates in my group. Again, Conservation Department is not your friend. If they were,
Time's
they would
up.
want to save you money and give you the right information here to help you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Carla, do you have another speaker card?
Next speaker is Jason Oakes. He's passing on speaking, but
Mr.
Well,
Oakes, do you wish to come forward, or you submitted a speaker card? Would you like to speak?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you. Carla, do you have another speaker card?
there is Tim Donze.
And just a reminder, just state your name and your address or ward number.
Sure.
Thanks.
Is this okay? Great. I'm Tim Donzie. I'm in Ward 1. I live at 3361 Wilderness Trail. And I've been here before. I've been attending deer management meetings since pre-COVID, so over 2 years. My main point today is from a citizen hunter perspective. I'm in Ward 1. It's where we can hunt. I think the city could do a lot more just to promote education to the citizens and encourage people to, if they don't hunt themselves, to invite hunters to come hunt on their property. There are new programs out through the Missouri Department of Conservation. They apply, it's called DMAP, Deer Management Assistance Program. This is a for instance. They allow, citizens to have a little group of landowners. You need 40 acres and you have some extra privileges to try and harvest more of those does like we talk about with quality deer management to manage the herd and want to reduce the does. So I've submitted online more information. I don't need to take up all 5 minutes today. I just want to continue to say, as I have for over 2 years, that the hunting community are here to help. If you engage with us or help me engage with them, we can have more of these little community management programs in the areas it is safe and legal to hunt. Whether or not you do sharpshooting or any of the other parts of the program, I am promoting the tool in the toolbox, which is the citizen hunters and the citizens that can invite hunters to come hunt. I'm a little offended by some of the information in the deer management plan about the harvest and safety of bow hunting, and other things. I don't need to go into any of those. I've made my point. I've made it for 2 years now, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Carla, do you have another speaker card?
No speaker cards for tonight, and we all have received the online submissions.
And online, I do see 3 attendees. Is there anyone that would like to speak that is online? If you do, can you use the raise hand feature so that way we can connect you to the session? All right, we're not seeing any, so therefore, with no other cards remaining and no speakers online, we will close out public participation. And we will now move into the remainder of our agenda topics here. So under administration for information, the first item is the update on accessibility. Councilmember Clark, do you want to comment or provide any update?
There are no updates from me at this point, but after the resident survey is completed, I'm sure we will have updates.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the review of city clerk and city administrator performance appraisal process. And I'll speak to this. So council members received the proposed performance evaluation today, and it's also available on the meeting agenda here. So you will see the one that states September, October 2022. In there, based on your feedback from our prior process, which was about a year ago, and also was, I believe it was Councilmember Bertolino who had brought this to the attention of the council, that we wanted to find a way to simplify and also try to eliminate some duplication, identify maybe questions that are more specific or appropriate for the council to evaluate. So went forward and took a first pass at that performance evaluation, taking the one from last year and then creating a draft for this year. So it is a draft, it is a work in progress, and would love to get your feedback, whether you have it tonight or if you want to send it forward by email. I'll look at that feedback and then be able to incorporate it as much as possible. So therefore, that would leave us then to begin the performance appraisal process, which coincides with the timeline for as we wrap up things for the year with the budgeting and the end of the year. So let me see if there's any questions or comments regarding that. Councilmember Clark.
Just one comment that last year we had discussed, sorry, I got fuzz on my face. We discussed having more SMART goals. And I would suggest that we go back through and make these more specific and measurable, especially time bound. You know, I didn't have time to go through these too much, but just for example, the first one carries out and effectively implements policies and directives. You know, I don't see a way we measure that. It's very subjective, and maybe go through and make these a lot more objective so that we can see year to year how much progress, as well as the anticipated goals, so we have something to measure against.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on the process there? That's from Bertolino.
Yeah, and just, Joe and I met last week or so, and I gave him my comments at that time. But just kind of from a logistics standpoint, the end of this, I agree with you, Tricia, about it, Teresa, having the specific SMART goals is the way to go, and not doing a subjective check off that we have. However, we're at the end of this current year. Mr. Cross is leaving us unless we hog time to his chair, which I have proposed at another memorandum. But anyway, Steve will leaving us, and we'll be having a new administrator coming on board. I think it would be expeditious to go ahead with Joe's recommendation on this abbreviated, albeit subjective kind of evaluation for this year. And then between now and the time we start to talk to and recruit or hire a new administrator, that we develop a new set of guidelines, which would really be around SMART objectives and objective things that can be evaluated on an annual basis. That's my 2 cents.
All right, any other comments on that? Otherwise, I will comment on it, but I'll wait till the next topic because it coincides nicely with that. So seeing no other hands up, the next item on the agenda under for information is the city administrator search. And as we all know, and are aware that our city administrator intends to retire, you will see that there is a document. It is a draft, but outlines some key components of how we look at the process going forward. And again, this is a draft, so therefore, if anyone has anything that they wish to have considered, or perhaps something that's missing here, please let me know. But at least this will help us get started here. And you'll see under the scope really the key chunks of work that are required for us to move forward through the city administrator search process. I anticipate that we'll have questions that we need to address early on in the process, but also later on. So Councilmember Edens brought up a question about how we will advertise, and including whether we advertise out of state. So I think that will be good discussion as we get these questions that we need to answer in the short term. We'll go through these and try to figure out the best solution. But to go back to the item that Councilmember Clerk and Bertolino were just speaking about, I think it's a part that we want to include in the onboarding, that it's very clear when we do have that new city administrator on board with the city, that they're aware of what we are looking at and what kind of ways we're going to measure their performance. So I think that ties in good with that. But let me see if there's any questions or comments on that. I know City Administrator Cross, you got your hand up, and let you speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make certain that the committee here understands that you're under no time frame in which to complete that. I committed to the mayor when I spoke with him in the middle of July, and then with Mr. Caratano when this assignment was made to this committee to find my replacement. I will remain at my post and do my job until you find a replacement and that person is properly onboarded. So we are transitioning. The mayor wanted to use transition as opposed to retirement. So we are transitioning, and that is, end of the year, January, February, March. I'm committed to being here as long as it takes. So I want you to find the right person, and I'm happy to help in that. But I don't want you to feel forced that it's not at the end of the year. That was a goal that we set, but I'm not expecting that to happen because it does take some time. So I want you to know that whatever it takes, I'm here. So, and I will remain here until whenever it takes. The mayor wanted a commitment.
Thank you for
end of
those.
April, whatever. So I just wanted you all to know that.
Yep, thank you for those comments. And in my opinion too, I do see that you'd be a key part, especially with onboarding and training, because there has to be an effective transition of knowledge and just getting caught up with, issues that we're covering at that time. So let me see if there's any questions or comments from anyone here. See none? I guess then Again, look for any feedback as you look this over and anticipate that we'll start to get this going in October and keep working our way. Okay, so next item is under for action here. And this one's also an item that I'll speak to. This is regarding the resident survey. So as you are aware, I did send an update in mid-August and also at the beginning of August. Appreciate the feedback that I have received. Don't have something right now for you tonight to review, but I have received feedback from several of the committees to consider questions for the upcoming survey. So what I'll suggest is that you'll be receiving by email the draft of the survey. Look for your feedback. We'd like to target getting that survey to go live, which will be, you know, a survey where folks will get information through the city website. We'll also promote it through social media, but they'll be able to go and take the survey, and we'd like to target that by the end of the month to coincide with Celebrate Wildwood on September 24th. And that was a suggestion by Councilmember Edens, because we'll have folks in town center, and that could be a good way to get some input at the city tent. So look for that information there. They'll summarize the questions. I mean, we're going to try to keep this survey at a reasonable length so that, you know, folks are interested in providing that feedback. I did meet with City Administrator Cross and our Economic and Communications Manager, Tom Lee, to talk about how we'll socialize it. So there's already a mention of the survey coming up in the Gazette that will be published this month, and also will be promoted on social media and the city website. Any questions or comments on the survey? Okay, then we'll move on. Next item is the policy regarding sunshine requests by council members. City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Garitano and I have spoken about this a couple times in the past. And the reason why we put it under FAR action for tonight's particular meeting is to decide if we want to move forward with it. This particular subject has been on this agenda for this committee going all the way back to early 2019. And the reason it was put on the agenda back then, or at least to give it some visibility, is that there were some things going on with the council at the time that dictated that we might need to do something different. And what was happening was that council members were making sunshine requests on behalf of residents. So the residents didn't have to pay for the money. And at the time, the council members weren't. And it got out of hand, quite honestly. And it was because of that particular council. Things have changed, obviously, a great deal. So I'm not pushing for this. The mayor is not pushing for this. The city attorney is not pushing for this. But so we figured if it's something that you all feel is important that we need to do, then we can, the city attorney and I would get some legislation or get a proposed legislation in front of you the next meeting or so. But if you don't feel it's important anymore, that time has come and gone, then effectively you all could decide to just remove it from the agenda, and we don't worry about it unless something happens where we have to address it. So it's not being abused now as it was in the past. Thank you.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. But and some of us lived through those days of unrelenting requests that were asking for ridiculous things like years of emails between council members and so on. We're only one election away from that happening again. Who knows who will be sitting here a year from now or 2 years from now. I do think the city does need some sort of sane policy on how to address these sunshine requests. For the most part, they're minimal requests. They're easy to satisfy, but we've had cases where they've been just outlandish. And I think we do need a policy. So that's what it is, and how we control it and what's the cost, I don't know. But I think we do need a policy to prevent what was happening a few years ago.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah,
I can't agree more. I was in a few of those meetings and it was unfun to say the least. So I think this is maybe one of those situations where, you know, cooler heads are always a better party to be dealing with on things. And so since we don't have that issue now, I think if we can put a clean, concise, simple plan in place that protects us just in case, you know, something or one of us goes off the rails, who knows? But better safe than sorry, I would say.
All right, Councilmember Hopper.
I'm just gonna chime in and agree as well. So I don't know if we need a motion to move forward with that, then I would be happy to make the motion that we draft a
Sure, and
policy for
and
that.
if I could make a suggestion, unless someone objects, maybe the motion is that council members should be treated the same as our residents are when it comes to sunshine requests, unless it is a request that's pertinent to a topic that is taking place at that very moment there. Because then you might need information to make a decision at a meeting for a vote. But if it's unrelated, or, you know, I want to sunshine Nathan Hopper's emails for the last 2 years or whatever, I mean, that is certainly not productive, and therefore should be treated just like every other resident would have to go through. So I would say, if that's okay, maybe if you want to modify your motion.
I'm good
I
with
think-
that. Absolutely.
Councilmember Edens?
Yeah, I would just tweak your wording just a little bit so that timely may not be overly considered, so that if it's just general background information to help you do your job, so that maybe it doesn't have to be up for a vote in the next month and a half. I say that because when I came in and I had a lot of background information for some problematic areas related to the EPA in Ward 2, my background information was almost 200 pages that the department provided myself with. And at the time, the previous administrator complained about the printing, and as if we can't afford to educate our council members on important issues. So I don't want that to happen to someone else. So if it's relative background information, regardless of the time sensitive nature of the topic, I think that should be included.
Any other comments or questions on that? So Councilmember Bertolini.
Yeah, sorry, could you repeat what the motion is? Joe?
Yeah, but, well, I'll say it and then Nathan can confirm it, but I would say then that the motion is to develop a policy so that council members would follow the same process as our residents for sunshine requests. And I will remove, we won't mention timely, but just unrelated to pertinent business, or kind of see what our city attorney can come up with that.
Yeah, I think keeping it a little broad at first and see what the attorney can kind of find through for wording. But yeah, I agree that with Councilman Edens, we want to make sure that it's the opportunity for appropriate information is there, but we don't want it to go out of hand.
Mr. Chair, if I may, when we just were briefly looking at language, and this goes back a couple of years now, but it basically said pretty much what Ms. Edens just said. The policy would state something along in the effect that that council members would be held to the same standards as our residents are when they make a sunshine request, unless that request is required for you all to do your duties. It was simple as that, that if you needed the
I think
information
that's-
in order to complete your duties as a council member, then that's it. It was pretty simple. Again, we'll let Mr. Young come up with the final language, but it was pretty simple, that just like you said, Ms. Edens, if you all need something to understand, you're not doing it to pass on information to someone else and so forth. It's pretty simple. If you need it to do your job, you need it. And you're not
Okay.
going to be charged for it.
I've got Councilmember Farmer, Clark, and Bertolino.
So I think that's great. I vaguely remember, wasn't it the city administrator that would be the deciding factor? If I remember that right?
Probably.
So I think that's an important piece to put in, and then just based on our previous experience up here, leaving it in, I love vague stuff a lot, but like those kind of things are, we've had some folks perhaps up here that would argue that whatever they were asking for was pertinent to their job. So I would say, put in a who makes that final decision, and then I would even suggest, I don't know that I want to go too far on that road, but some sort of an appeal process to, the wider council, I guess. If somebody wants to get up and argue that this is so important in a public space, then fine. And if they can convince 9 of us that it is, then, and that overrides you or whoever is in your spot later, whatever. But I just think based on how we have some of the personalities that sometimes are up at this table, all of those contingencies are good things to have.
Right, Councilmember Clark and then Berlino.
Yeah, I just wasn't, I'm not clear on this, on the motion, if it covers everything that Mr. Cross was talking about, that shouldn't we have something in there that says that the information that we get to somehow is not passed on outside of what we need it for our work, but then maybe I say, oh, well, so-and-so wants it too, so I'll send it to them also. Somehow say that this is for our use only. Does that make sense?
It does, and these are all good. These are all very, very good suggestions. So we will, and Mr. Young's, he's on the call. He's actually splitting his time between this meeting and P and Z. But in fact, he just came online here. So
Yeah.
we would propose to bring back a draft policy back at the October meeting. But it looks like Mr. Young's on the call.
Yeah, I was just simply going to suggest that a couple things. One is, in terms of the specifics, I think it'd be easier for you all to nitpick something drafted as opposed to try to come up with everything on the fly. So I would suggest, based on the comments, I think I've got enough to get started and we can work from there. The second part to Councilmember Clark's comment about sharing the information, I think that would already be covered under the city's email policy that prohibits the sharing of emails that come from the city.
Okay, well, Councilmember Berlino, did you have something else?
No, just what do we charge a citizen for a sunshine request?
So what we do is if documents need to be pulled, not electronic documents, but actual hard copy documents, it is charged at the lowest rate of the clerical person in that department at their hourly rate. Number one. Number two, copies are at 10 cents a copy unless it is an electronic copy. And then there is no charge for an electronic copy. The person making the sunshine request is required to pay for it before they receive them. They have to come to City Hall and pay. So it's usually not too onerous. We don't waive it. We get that just about every time somebody asks something that said, hey, can you waive the fees? We do not waive fees.
All right, so with that, maybe the motion, Nathan, will be that based on the input from tonight's meeting, the motion is to prepare a policy for review at a future admin public works meeting.
Yeah, it would be basically to create a draft policy.
Yeah,
To review next admin and public works committee.
Is there a second? You by Councilmember Farmer. Any other questions or comments on the motion? All right, seeing none, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Okay, that passes. So now we'll move on to Public Works. We do not have any for information items. So the next item under for action is the Deer Management Plan White Buffalo proposal. So you will see an attachment there as requested by the committee at the last meeting to get a proposal from White Buffalo for review here. So I'll open up to see if there's any questions or comments or a motion. Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. I first want to thank the residents for coming in and making their comments known. I've reviewed all of the comments that they've made, as well as what we've been sent on email and what's been said here and in the mayor's copy. And I also want to thank the Deer Management Committee that worked so hard to come up with this, and Dr. Rambaud especially. As Dr. Rambaud has pointed out so many times in his brief statements, this issue affects all of the residents, not just a few. There are concerns about health and welfare of our citizens, the animals, our ecology, all of those in our city. Our white-tailed deer management plan is very thorough, and it approaches a solution to a very large problem in a scientific, methodical, efficient, and effective way. Each piece of the data that I have read in there is supported and cited by a site, and the citing is a peer-reviewed source. Most all of them are. The minutia of the report can be confusing if we read it with an agenda and without considering all the dependent, independent, and consistent variables that are both quantitative and qualitative. The report covers most of what the residents have requested, actually. That said, I move that we accept the draft plan. At number 1, I've got 4 points. 1, as it suggests to proceed with utilizing White Buffalo's services in the initial and major population reduction. 2, as noted in a number of places in the report, explore robust, capable, and in control archery feasibility within in the subsequent phases. 3, continue the deer management subcommittee at least until we know timelines, key process indicators, major milestones, and target geographical land areas that have been established. And 4, as pointed out in the draft plan, we develop effective public education methods and implement them as soon as possible.
Councilmember Berlino.
That was a motion.
That's a motion.
I second.
All right, Councilmember Berlino seconds. We have a motion on the floor.
Point of order.
Yeah.
I actually think that we already approved this at a previous meeting, so I think points 1 and 2 are redundant. I don't think it takes an additional motion to reapprove the plan. Point 3, we didn't address, which was keeping the deer management task force going. And perhaps it would still be appropriate to have an additional motion on education. I just don't think we have to have a motion to reapprove something we approved at a previous meeting.
Yeah, but we didn't have the estimate until tonight.
Yeah.
From White Buffalo, so without seeing.
So then we're approving the method, but not the plan, because
So
the
at
phrasing
time,
is the
was the
plan.
direction.
Okay,
So we have that. This would send it to council. So.
okay, I apologize.
Okay, so therefore, but let me open up and see if there's any other comments or discussion. I'll make a comment though. I mean, we have been dealing with the issue of deer management for quite some time. And in fact, when I did a recent poll of residents, myself, about I think over 300 were the majority, was over 70% were supportive of the primarily relying on a professional sharpshooting method to euthanize deer. That was 71%, which means 221 people responded to the poll in support of it. 29% were against it. That's 92 people. But I do think that we are a city, we're the 3rd largest city in the state. We're 68 square miles. So I see that there is, and I think this aligns with what Councilmember Clark was saying, there's room to do a lot of different things to see what works best for our city, because there's no way we can cover the whole city all at one time. And so while we are moving down this track right here with White Buffalo, and my conversations with them have been that they would be focused in just one area of a city, perhaps even one quadrant, that still leaves 3 other quadrants that nothing's happening at this time. So I would like to see what opportunities exist for us to partner with organizations to include a little bit of a diverse approach, such as bow hunting. I mean, we're also doing another approach where we're going to consider an ordinance regarding a prohibition on feeding the deer. And so we're layering different types of approaches. And I think therefore, I want to make sure it's clear, we're not dismissing everything just because we're making a decision with this tonight. At least that's how I feel, that's in my opinion. But I also think what Councilmember Clark mentioned about, having an effective program where we educate folks will be very helpful. And that's one step already underway when we do the deer no feed ordinance. So just want to express my thoughts in there and, again, why I would feel this is at least us taking some concrete action on an issue that we continue to hear over and over from our residents. Anyone else have anything else to say? Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of specific points. The
Sure.
Conservation Department had very little involvement in this plan beyond accessing their publicly available data sources that you can find online. And so they have managed hunt data, but they also had all of St. Louis County's data available, and that's crunched in the back in the report if anybody cares to go back and look at it again. But the main point is that archery hunting was always contemplated as a part of our solution. And archery, a team of dedicated archers can probably really help us out at an attractive price point for maintenance level deer management, taking out deer here and there and so forth after white buffalo have done their thing and taken out a whole bunch of them. That's right in the plan. The issues that come up will be archer qualification, perhaps tagged arrows, the kinds of things that other communities have explored to ensure the comfort, the viability of the program, and also the comfort of the folks that aren't as avidly supportive of archery hunting as a solution. So it's got to work for everybody. I really couldn't have defended the overall plan any better than Ms. Clark did. So thank you for that. I'm here to answer any factual questions that come up, but I think this is the approach that's been suggested here is the approach that's right in the public education part needs to come to the fore now, and we need to start working on what we're going to do to engage our resident archer community. That's my spiel. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Hey, I'll just add one final comment that, I think we're testing and learning this, right? We're going to see how this works out, and we're going to look at the different approaches as we try to implement them into the city. So we'll see what's working, what isn't. And I think some of it too has to depend on the geography, the density of the area and how it affects it. But, I would see us having phase gates along the way where we kind of stop and take a pause and say, is this working out well? Maybe, you got to adjust the levers a little bit where it's like what may be working good in one area, maybe just for that area, and maybe others have different approach. So therefore, with the comments that we heard tonight, I think those are good comments too. And, I think we'd like to continue to look at that and see what we could do to have a comprehensive approach. So that's my comment there. Seeing no other hands up, then we take a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Motion passes. Okay. And we will move on to the next topic here, which is the proposed street name change request. And so this committee, and I'll ask for a little bit of recollection too from the last meeting. I believe did we make a motion at the last meeting to move that to council? I know Councilmember Bertolino asked for some feedback, but yeah, we're going to talk about it. But do we still have to take a motion, or is it already ready to go to council unless there's another action by tonight?
Mr. Chair, my recollection was that a vote was taken of this committee. It was passed to accept the name change. However, there was kind of actually a motion was made to interact with the church. That motion was made prior to the vote. And so that report has been sent to the committee, I believe. But then the vote was taken and it was approved, I believe unanimously, to make the name change. So at this point, I think at this committee, the only thing left is perhaps to review the comments that were made by the two gentlemen that Director Brown and I interviewed. The committee has the option of reconsidering their vote if they so chose. Otherwise, it would then go to council.
Councilmember Clark, I saw your hand going up and also see Councilmember Nine.
Well, tell me if this is the right time. I want to make an additional motion on this. I'm also very sensitive on this issue for reasons I won't go into too much now. But that is why I was reaching out to our Black leadership of the county before I made the motion last time. I'm so thrilled that the city has engaged with the Union Baptist Church to include them in this sensitive and very important decision. And thank you so much for doing that, going out of your way. We cannot, and we don't want to erase history by eliminating the reminders. Those reminders help us to not go backwards in time and repeat. This is not just a simple name change for a road. It's a very serious issue, and we have to address this with sensitivity and transparency, compassion, and inclusion. That means inclusion of the Black community. The historicity of the old state road has to be preserved, just like they talked about. We've already voted to move forward with that, as we've just talked about, and to make a placard telling who Elijah Madison, right? Elijah Madison was. I would like to motion, I want to move that we respect the wishes of and the insight of all that history that the Union Baptist Church shared with us, as well as with all of our Black family members and residents. I move that we erect a placard or stele or something that memorializes the old slave road as well, and the cemetery. In addition, I'd like to add that we plan some sort of an unveiling of those placards and invite possibly Colonel Kenneth Gregory, who is the chief of police for St. Louis County, as well as his Lieutenant Colonel Troy Doyle. And they are both Black. And Lieutenant Colonel Doyle told me he would love to be there if we have an unveiling. And that would tie us together, and so that we are not a white community going in and making decisions alone for our Black residents and for the Black community at large. Like I said, my family is more than 50% Black. And so I am sensitive about this issue, but I look very white sitting up here. So I guess I'm a little more open to talk about it than maybe other people, but that's my motion.
So you're making a motion. Is there a second for the motion? Okay, I am gonna, Councilmember Nine, you had your hand up before. Was that
That's
for a
fine. I
second?
was not in as much wonderful detail as Teresa said it, but I was going along the same lines of not remembering what was in there as far as memorializing it or, keeping the history. So now that she said all that, I think that's great.
All right, any other questions, comments on the motion on the floor? Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I also agree with Councilmember Clark. I'm just wondering, we have several historical markers around the city, and they're all relatively the same size and shape, which I think is great. I'm just wondering if, a story like this is pretty important. So maybe we want to look at something that is perhaps a little bit more substantial than our usual little placards, and can maybe articulate the story better than just, a name in a sentence or two.
Okay, and I think maybe we can defer that to the expertise of our staff to figure out what's the best way to do it and the work they've done. So any other comments on the motion on the floor? Okay, thank you for that. Then seeing no other comments, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Okay, that motion passes. Oh, Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I just want to thank Steve. Who went to the church, Steve? You and
Actually, Councilmember Bertolino, it was Director Brown and I, and we had both with they were phone calls to the pastor emeritus as well as the current pastor.
Good. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate your notes to us. And I was sold the fact that Dora says it's okay. Doris Frazier says
They did
it's
say it was okay. Doris and Maria.
That was it. Okay, good.
All right, moving on then. The next item are the contractor bids for the 2022 fall tree planting. And Rick, I'm going to guess this is yours.
You guessed right. Council members, this item was before you, I think last month, quite frankly. If you recall, we were working with Davie Resource Group to put together an RFP for a fall tree planting project. We put the RFP out and requested responses to it. On, I think it was July 27th, we received just one response to the RFP to plant trees in the fall. So last month, the thought was to extend the RFP, see if we could get some additional proposals submitted to the city for the fall. Pardon me. So that's what we tried to do, worked with Davie Resource Group to essentially extend the RFP. And unfortunately, we were not able to bring back to you any additional proposals or bids to plant trees in the fall. So effectively, we are stuck with the one bid that we received from Gamma Tree Experts to plant trees in the fall, but we do have one bid to consider. So with that, I am recommending that we move forward with a contract with Gamma Tree Experts to do the fall tree planting project. That would plant potentially about 200 trees at a cost of $395 per tree. The total would be $79,000 for that contract for the fall. We would still offer, as we did last year, the option if a subdivision HOA wants to upsize. We have prices for larger trees. These would be the number 15 trees that we would plant as we did last year. If an HOA wants to upsize and go with a larger tree, we would allow it. They would have to pay the difference in costs for the larger size tree, but we would work with them to implement that as well. So that is the recommendation. And with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Okay, Councilmember Farmer.
I'll make the motion. They were working hard in my neighborhood on the trees, and it looks great. They got almost all the ones that I wanted to get taken out, and I know they were grinding this week. So my only suggestion is, I know at least in my neighborhood, some of the new trees that we're putting in are not really lasting all that long. So I don't know what the warranty situation is, or if it's perhaps a good idea just to look and say, hey, do we need to go to the next size tree so we aren't replacing a tree every couple of years? That's the only thing. But the trees not being dead and standing up look great, and I'm looking forward to little trees coming back.
I don't see any other hands up. Is there a motion for the department's recommendation? Or oh, sure. Sorry about that, Rick.
Well, I didn't say it, but the trees are guaranteed for 1 year. So we do have that for previous years and for this contract as well. So we'll be going back and then making a final inspection of the trees that were planted last fall. And that'd be part of the work this fall, is to replant those trees as well, as we plant the new 200 trees. So
Are we doing do we do any outreach to the subdivisions about the possibility of upgrading them? Other than just, in theory, they might know about that and we as council people go tell them?
I guess so far we haven't really made a formal outreach to HOAs. It really was the one subdivision that reached out to us initially. So we haven't had too much interest other than the one subdivision HOA right now. But if you're aware of any, let us know and we'll certainly follow up directly with them and see if there's interest. Again, the arborists tell us that these smaller trees will catch up to the bigger trees. So I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out with the ones we have planted, quite frankly, over a couple of years to see how close. I know there are some that I've seen that have done quite well and are quite large.
Some of them are good. So
Yeah.
my only other thought is, I don't know if it's possible. I know you guys have a plan as to where you're going to put the new trees. But if you do happen to do the outreach to the subdivision trustees or whatever, and you're like, hey, we're going to put in, I'm making up a number, 100 trees in your neighborhood, and they go, can we have 50 trees, but bigger? Can we do that or no?
Well, I hadn't potentially considered that thought just yet, frankly. We can certainly provide more details. Dan's kind of helping us with the plan as far as the replanting. And we're working with Davey as well in terms of locating the 200 trees and how do we best go about it, frankly. What we've discussed, and this is something you need to be aware of, is replanting them based on a weighted average of where we have removed the trees. So essentially, if your ward had the highest percentage of trees removed, you look at the highest percentage replanted. That seemed to be a good way maybe to approach it. And then from within each ward, then we'll have to get more into the weeds as to where those trees go specifically. Because the fact of the matter is we are going to be behind initially with this first replanting project, but we want to be strategic about replanting them and where they go and make reasonably good decisions about those trees and where they get replanted. But we'll need to make sure you all are informed of it and how we're approaching it so that you can address those questions when they come up as well, frankly, because I suspect they may well come up.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, probably not this year, but I know at least, again, in mine, our trees a number of our trees are kind of aging out. So we're removing them as a subdivision. It might be worthwhile. Perhaps it gets a price break if, a couple of these older subdivisions like mine can say, hey, we also want to do 75 trees or whatever it is. And then maybe they can cut us an extra break because I assume we get trees in bulk prices. The more you get, the less it is, but I could be wrong.
We have pricing based on the size of trees in the RFP. So it's not based on quantities per se. So if we plant more, we don't really get a break, frankly. Other than I suppose we could potentially ask the contractor if they might be willing to do that. Those are always things we can pursue, I suppose, if there's an option there.
All right, I've got two more hands up, Councilmember Edens and then Clark.
Just a general discussion that we do have some trees that are not quite dead enough to remove within that warranty period that are still alive, but for lack of a better phrase, are failing to thrive. So I've got a resident that has babied a tree that looked significantly smaller, maybe perhaps because of the particular variety than other trees that were planted at the same size and at the same time. I mean, it's a twig, and now it's been a couple of years. And so I don't think it's going to get much better, this particular tree. So we need to include maybe replacing some of those trees as well. I mean, if you blow on it, it might fall over, and that resident's done everything for it. So, but again, it's not quite dead, and
So we're happy
didn't fall
to
under the warranty.
we're happy to inspect those trees if we're made aware of them, and
Yeah.
certainly we would follow up if it needs replacing and to get replaced and added to the program.
Okay.
Right, Councilmember Clark.
Well, to me, that's a very expensive tree for that small of a tree. Does that cover, I have two questions, but my first one is, does that cover like the planting and everything involved in that tree? Or is that just for the tree? And my second question is, why are the trees dying? Or do we have recidivism in the areas that they're dying? Is there a reason that they're dying there? And do we look at that and try to eliminate that potential death of a next tree?
Councilman, as far as the price, yeah, the price includes the purchase and the planting of the tree. So it's the tree in place. So it's the full price. As far as trees dying, we always lose trees. We lose existing trees. We lose planted trees. We lose trees that have been out there for 10 years, 20 years. It's Mother Nature. Now that said, they're warranted for 1 year, so we can get them replaced at 1 year. If we have a spot that's problematic, what we generally do is try to get our arborist to take a look at it, provide their best opinion as to what we should do moving forward. I'm of the opinion if we do find a tree or a site that's unsuitable, we need to decide that and move on. Not replant and not keep losing trees if that's the case. So we try to pull in Mark with Davy Resource to evaluate it for us and make a good decision in that manner. That's about the best I can tell you, but we always lose trees. There's no way we're going to have 100% success when we plant trees. We're going to lose trees. That's why we warranty them up front, is because we recognize that fact. We are working extra hard now to try to engage the residents that we plant trees at with regard to best practices of maintaining the trees and watering them so that they will help out. So we are mailing postcards, multiple postcards, and now we actually got a door hanger that we're going to put on their home to provide them best practices information relative to maintaining that tree, to hope to increase the odds that it will be successful. So I guess I'm open to any other suggestions in that regard, but we're always going to lose a few trees. And that's why we have the warranty for them to cover that situation primarily.
All right, I've got Councilmember Farmer and then Berlino.
Yeah, Rick, I might have mentioned this before. I forget sometimes, but what if we approached the homeowners where these trees are going to go with almost like an opt-in request on the door hanger? So, I mean, I want to there are trees, city's trees, we get to put them where we want, I suppose. But if the resident is for sure, just like, I know there's a few people in my neighborhood that aren't going to take care of anything you put in front of their house. So, some of those trees have been ash trees that are gone now and they can be gone, but maybe, a quick opt-in, like, yeah, I'll take care of the tree. And then we can go that way instead of just sort of sticking it there and saying like, hey, we hope you water this.
Councilman, we haven't made it quite that far with our process. We do reach out to them with postcards especially at this point, with as many trees as we need to plant. If residents are not excited about the prospect, if they oppose it, we quite frankly will probably move on because we just have so many trees to fill. So it's not really worth our time to fight them on a tree, but it's not to the point where we're explicitly asking them yes or no. We have been directed to plant trees on our roadways and develop tree-lined streets. So we haven't made it explicitly a request on the residents' part to say, do you want a tree or not? Because we feel like we've been directed that we want trees. We want trees on our roadways, generally speaking. But that said, again, if someone says they don't want a tree and they're pretty strongly opinionated, and quite frankly, we're probably going to move on to the next site because we've got plenty of trees to plant and we'd rather have a successful outcome rather than fight a resident over at this point.
Councilmember Berlino.
Yeah, Rick, in the cost of the tree, have we evaluated that if we do not get the 1 year warranty and replacement, that the cost of the tree would come down to the point where those we do lose, we simply pay a full price for putting it back up? So am I saying that right? That we're spending a whole lot on insurance basically. And if we eliminated that, would the price come down to a more reasonable amount?
Councilmember Berlin, we've had those discussions internally about what's the best approach, especially when we're planting larger quantities of trees, and that might be something we consider in the future, frankly. Is it better just to not require the warranty, maybe pay a contractor to water? In fact, we asked for bids in this RFP for watering, we were not able to get prices. So we wanted to have that flexibility to actually pay a contractor to do the watering on the trees, but we didn't get bids. It's going to become difficult to do watering logistically, just with the number of trees, frankly. But the 1-year warranty is, from what I'm told, is pretty much a standard warranty in the industry. So they expect it. The contractors are used to it. They expect it. So I don't know that we're paying too much for it, frankly. But that's a good question that we should probably look into going down the road.
I don't know if this is to be true. Rick's the expert and his staff and no, but it seems to me that anytime I've bought trees or anything from a nursery, the cost of the warrant, the warranty is like 50% of the tree, if not 100% of the tree, for them to plant it and warrant it for a year. Those are numbers that I have heard in just my personal experience in the past. I don't know if you can opt out of that, but for them to warrant that tree, not even planting. I said planting, so I misspoke actually. But if you go and buy a tree or something like that, it seemed like it was, as I say, as much as 50%, if not more. Dan and Rick can find out for sure, but that's just some information I've got in my mind anyway.
We'll see no other hands up over here. Carla, we've got a motion on the floor, right? So we have a first. So we do need a second. Is there a second then to move forward with the department's recommendation, right, Carla? Is that the motion? Councilmember Nine seconded. So any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Motion passes. All right, moving on. The next item that is on the agenda is the policy on the public acceptance of private streets. And I just learned that we're going to postpone this item to, Rick, is that the next meeting or no, we don't at this point? All right, so we're just going to postpone it for the foreseeable future. And then now come back to this committee. So I'm fine with no action on this and we'll just keep it on the agenda when that time arises. City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason that we're postponing it is that Director Brown, myself, and the city attorney have had numerous discussions about this. This is an extremely expensive proposition for a city to take over private streets, and there is a lot involved. If we're trying to be revenue neutral, you take over, Director Brown has told us that it is as much as $23,000 per center mile, a mile of streets. Take a subdivision like Radcliffe. Take a subdivision like Radcliffe, it's almost 3 miles of streets that we would take over. And they've been asking for us to take over those streets. But that's very expensive each and every year. That $23,000 is an annual number. So it gets very expensive. What we're looking at is trying to find ways. So City Attorney Young is looking into how we might be able to fund them. A homeowners association might set up a TDD, or they might set up a SID or something. There may be other ways of helping a subdivision. There's also we also have an ordinance on the books in terms of any street that is built after a certain date, the city does not take them over. I mean, that is it's an ordinance, is it not? The date of taking over streets.
It would be in there.
It's a policy. Anyway. But prior to that, we can look at it, but there's just a lot more involved rather than saying, well, do we want to do it or not? And that's why we asked to just postpone this so we can really cover the waterfront and come back with some proposals about whether the city wants to take over private streets or not. Because like I say, it's a hugely expensive proposition with no tangible benefit to the city other than saying, well, that's what the city does. So we just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So we just ask for your patience while we kind of work through some of these details and then come back to the committee then.
You want to, is there a question like just
Yeah.
quick one? Okay.
Quick, Dave, did you just say that any new development, the streets will not be dedicated over to the city? New development? Like, right, we did dedicate Taylor.
No, I think the expectation would be, yeah, the ones that we have approved to date certainly would be taken over by the city if that was the intent, like Brightleaf was certainly the intent, Main Street Crossing was certainly the intent there, yeah.
But you're saying in the future, we're going to say to developers, that's going to be a homeowner association responsibility. We're not going to take over we're not going to dedicate the street. That's the proposal in the future.
I don't think we're quite there yet. Frankly, Councilmember Bertolino, we're focused primarily on existing streets. But whether it's an existing street or a newly built street, they both have the same financial impact in the long term. Yeah.
All right, we'll see that come back to the agenda in a future meeting. So next is the proposed city consultant agreement for the final design of structure 3-107. Rick.
Thank you, Chair. Council members, I think you're familiar with this matter as well. Because we have dealt with it in previous meetings. You may recall Cochrane Engineering is working on the preliminary or has wrapped up the preliminary design of the replacement to structure 3-107, which is a 11 by 7 foot stone box culvert down on Wild Horse Creek Road, south, about 2,200 feet south of Centaur Road. That structure is in poor condition and needs to be replaced. Cochrane has submitted a preliminary engineering report to the department for the replacement of that structure. The report is recommending a new 62.5 foot single span bridge in that location with an estimated cost of $790,000. So it's a fairly expensive project, unfortunately. We will need to acquire some easements from the adjacent property owners, which includes the state parks. And we hope to initiate those discussions here rather soon, and start that process of acquiring easements. So at this point, we would like to continue with the final design of the structure. And Cochrane in that regard has presented a proposal to the department to do that work, which I believe was included with the memorandum. The proposal is for $33,140 to complete the final design of the bridge structure, the 62.5 foot span bridge at that location. We're figuring that we would start construction next year as soon as the easements and the design have been completed. I really don't foresee that happening yet this fall. Best case, we would be able to bid a project and maybe start work next year. It really depends on how quickly we can get the easements ironed out with those property owners. I should point out that we did make some adjustments in the mid-year budget, which is coming to you next Monday night, to address the engineering costs for this project. So the thought was to amend, as part of the mid-year budget amendment, include the design costs in that budget. So with that, the recommendation again is to move forward with the agreement with Cochrane to complete the final design of the bridge structure for the not to exceed amount of $33,140. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Councilmember Clark.
So, Mr. Brown, of course, I have questions about this because this has been something that I've been a little concerned about. So we're not going to work on it till next year, but the report, I did not have time, since it was late when we received this report. I haven't gone through it detailed, but just looking over it briefly, I'm still concerned about the structural integrity of the not only the bridge, but the land that's underneath it. Is there any thought of, I know this is very inconvenient for people that live on Wild Horse Creek Road, but, and I use it quite often, and when I have lately, I've been seeing big cement trucks going across that. And like I've mentioned before, I've seen the cones, they must have been hit and they even end up in the creek bed. So either should we put up some more permanent type of structure there to keep people from two-lane? Mr. Rose said that he's seen people not even yield to the cones, just keep going on it and making it a two-lane. So because it can happen, it will. Is there a way we can error-proof that instead of just mistake-proof it? And as well, is it something for safety that we should close that? And so we have to travel back to either Wild Horse Creek Road or travel to Highway 100 or Austin Fort to maneuver that area instead of crossing that bridge before it's deemed structurally safe.
Council members, you know, we've discussed this previously, and as far as the existing structure, we are monitoring it very closely, and Dan has been involved in that process, and we've typically been going out sometimes multiple times a week, and particularly paying very close attention to the structure during rain events, that kind of thing. So again, as I've stated before, my opinion is it's safe unless it further deteriorates. If it further deteriorates, yes, we may want to consider other actions, which might include closing the road. But right now, it, by all accounts, is safe. It's not been a concern, so I believe it's fine at the moment. At some point, well, I guess the other thought is we really do have to weigh the pros and cons of doing such things as closing the road, because emergency vehicles do get through there, and we want to make sure that continues in the future. But obviously, safety is the primary concern. It's an 11-foot by 7-foot box culvert structure. And again, I will tell you, we will keep an eye on it, a very close eye on it. And if it deteriorates further, we will consider other options, which might be closing the road, frankly.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I guess I'm still concerned because looking at it and deeming that it's safe doesn't make me comfortable, especially when the report is talking about the soil underneath and how it has it's displaced and soft. The possibility of some, I don't know how heavy something it will take to crush it. So I guess I'm looking for some calculation, something that shows that how much it can withstand, instead of just, well, we think it will, because that's not going to help if it does break and someone is injured.
What I will tell you is, again, we have been out there with multiple experienced engineers. We have hired Cochrane Engineering, their professional engineering firm. They have been on site. Their engineers have inspected the site, as I have, as Dan has. So we had multiple folks look at it. Based on the advice that I've gotten from Cochrane, they believe it's safe in its current condition. It's handling the traffic currently. It's proven by that fact that it's safe. Vehicles are going over it every day, and it has done fine. It's not a concern in its current condition. If it deteriorates, the abutment and the approach would be the concern. The abutment is currently stable, and we believe if it deteriorates, it could still essentially support the loads that it supports today. So again, all I can tell you is we're going to keep a close eye on it. If we see deterioration, we're going to consider our options at that point, which certainly could include closing the road.
I'm sorry, one more follow-up. Yeah, I'm still not comfortable with it's safe if nothing happens, but I am glad to hear that Cochrane has agreed. So they evaluated it, and I haven't seen that in the report yet, but I haven't looked through it that closely. So I must have missed that they also have determined it to be safe for one-lane traffic.
Councilmember Edens, you had your hand up.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Sure.
So just to be clear, that closing the bridge to single lane was this director's decision. It was not a recommendation made by Cochrane. We made that as a recommendation as an additional safety factor beyond anything that Cochrane recommended, just to be clear.
Right, Councilmember Edens, you have a question or comment?
Yes, two things. I appreciate Director Brown's idea to close it to one lane. And I think that if that was the intent of the department, that we need to make sure then the vehicles are following that intent. And so if they're driving over the cones, perhaps we can use a different barrier, as Ms. Clark suggested. Otherwise, what is the point of trying to make safety improvements or enforcing laws on the road if we're not willing to take those steps, if we know that there's a documented issue? My other thing is there anything that we can do as a council to help expedite the when we're trying to acquire easements and the process is related to public safety. So this is a documented issue where I think if a property owner said, nope, I don't ever want to sell you the easement, and we knew we needed a bridge replaced, that we would have to probably move forward with eminent domain. Is there anything that I can do as a council to put in place a procedure that would speed up the processes in these types of situations so that it's not a 4-month process and we start in the new year? How can I help this situation and help in the future?
Before I address that, I want to backtrack real quick and make one comment, because you mentioned the issue with the channelizers. So we are going to install permanent delineator posts on the approaches to the bridge, so that the channelizers are going to go away. We're going to have permanent posts that have been installed, flexible posts that get glued essentially to the pavement on the approaches in lieu of the channelizers. So that change is something that's going to happen here in the coming week or so, hopefully, if we get the materials in place. So
great.
I meant to say that before, but as far as the right of way, I guess it just depends on the situation. So I think we do have a contact with the one property owner. We've got contacts with the park. So at this point, as long as they're willing to talk to us, and we'll find out. If they aren't willing to talk to us and they're non-responsive, and you have a way to get a hold of the property owner, that could be a help, certainly. So we'll see how that goes out. But we do have a contact with the adjacent property on the east. And state parks, we certainly already have a dialogue going with them on the other side. Excuse me, they'd be on the east. The property on the west, we have a name that Dan's got, and if they are not responsive, we'll let you know.
Okay. Do you find in these situations that when you talk with the residents and you say, this is a safety problem, here's why we're doing it, and here's the plan for the bridge, that they can get on board quickly, or it just depends?
No, we hope to meet with them shortly and essentially sit down with them, explain the situation, what we're working on, the plan for the new bridge, and why we need to gain access to their property to construct the new bridge. So, I mean, ultimately, if they aren't, if they are not able to work with us or refuse our offer to acquire the easement, we have the right of condemnation, and that's where the council would have to support the city moving forward in that regard. If we truly have a property owner who does not want to negotiate with us or turns us down in our offer.
Okay. Well, yeah, essentially what I'm talking about is some sort of like internal policy in place that, after X number of weeks, that it automatically moves out of the negotiation process, because for things like this, time is of the essence. But anyway, I said my piece. Thanks. I'm just trying to help.
City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rick, do we not use a third party to help acquire easements and so forth? They do the initial negotiating with them. No, that's number one. And then I have a follow-up.
So on some projects, yes, we have engaged an outside right-of-way consultant to help us. Haven't necessarily done that in this case, given that it's just two properties. But that's certainly a tool in the toolbox that we could use. For federally funded projects, you asked about a deadline. Federally funded projects follow the federal statute that was passed in the 70s for right-of-way acquisition on federally funded projects. And they actually do have essentially a deadline in there whereby if a property owner does not respond to an offer within, I forget if it's 60 or 90 days, essentially you can go to condemnation. You have to let that minimum window of time pass, but after that, and if they've shown that they have not responded, you can proceed with condemnation here, proceedings on that property owner.
So, Mr. Chair, the follow-up then is just a reminder, and it's been mentioned a couple times as we've discussed various issues. Strucker Road being the most recent one. And anyone here can correct me if I'm wrong, but the mayor has reminded the council we have not, I believe in the history of the city, done condemnation or eminent domain at all, ever. So we would approach that as a means, as a last resort, regardless. Of the timing of the criticality of it.
It's here. Carla, can you remind me, do we have a motion on the floor? We don't. So let's see, Rick, what are you looking for here?
I am looking for the recommendation to the committee is to move forward with an agreement with Cochrane to do the final design of the project. So I am looking for approval of that recommendation tonight from the committee.
All right, so with that, and our monitors have turned off, so I don't know if that means Zoom is still going. Okay, maybe that was a sign that we got to end the meeting. But anyway, can we get a motion for as the director has recommended or otherwise? Councilmember Edens and Councilmember Farmer, you had your hand up right here. So any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, then all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All right. Anyone oppose or abstain? All right. Seeing none, the motion passes. All right, we're going to move forward then. Number 6 on the agenda, the proposed city consultant agreement for the design of the Old State Road shared use path. Rick.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. Council members, this next item pertains to the design of the Old State Road shared use path project. And I apologize, I'm trying to get my paperwork in front of me. That project is federally funded. We did receive federal funds for it. More recently, it would be to design a 10-foot wide shared use path along Old State Road along the west side from Nantucket Island Drive there near Old Fairway up through Old State Place subdivision. That's a newer subdivision. So the project is in our budget for this year. Design needs to begin. We did get the federal funds in hand. You, as a council, have approved the federal funding application or agreement, earlier this year. So to begin the engineering, we did request letters of interest from interested firms, professional services firms, to complete the design of the project earlier this year. We've received 6 letters of interest from engineering firms to do that work. Dan and I went through the 6 solicitations as best we could, and we decided, based on review of the letters of interest, that the firm Intuition and Logic was the most qualified to complete the design of the project. So with that, we asked Intuition Logic to forward a scope of work, and we reviewed the scope of work and have negotiated a fee along with that scope of work. So tonight, we'd like to move forward with a agreement to engage Intuition and Logic, the engineering firm, to complete the design of the project. The cost of that agreement would be just under $171,000. Plus, I'm asking for an additional $10,000 contingency for any additional engineering work that might arise. So that is the recommendation to the committee from the department, is to execute a city consultant agreement with Intuition and Logic for design of the project for the not to exceed amount of $170,853.40 plus the $10,000 contingency. And so with that, I'll turn it over for any questions.
Councilmember Hopper. Then hand for a motion.
That is a hand for a motion.
All right. Anything else that you want to add to that?
Nope, I just, think this is gonna be good in that area, with so much going on over there, but that shared use path, I think will definitely provide some additional usage there that might be much needed.
Hey, Councilmember Edens with the second there. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Motion passes. Moving on next, number 7, potential locations for additional guardrail on Route 100. Rick?
Thank you, Chair Garitano. Council members, I think you've seen this information previously. It was prepared for your council meeting, I believe last month, and then we are now bringing it to you as a committee for further discussion and review. This pertains to the request from Councilmember Edens to look at additional guardrail installation locations on Route 100 to essentially protect users of the Wildwood Greenway in those locations. At least the way I interpreted it was those locations where the Greenway is in closer proximity to Route 100, where the concern would be greater. So I did provide a little background information in the memo if you had a chance to read it, because I thought it was important to call out the previous work that we did. And Mr. Burnley is probably aware of it. In 2014, we had a project where we installed some timber-backed guardrail that's visible right now, obviously between Taylor Road and West Glen Farms. That was a project that we added and actually got federal funding to construct in 2014. There was about 3,000 feet installed at that point in time for about 400 grand plus 30,000 in engineering fees, but we did get federal funding at that time for that project, which certainly helped to spread the cost. So if you want to take it one step further, we did look at locations essentially, and Dan was integral in this, looking at locations where we would potentially put more rail, essentially where the path comes to within 20 feet of Route 100. So we were able to identify, if you looked at the memorandum, essentially 3 locations where we felt new guardrail would make some sense. One's actually west of Route 109. I don't know if that was necessarily on the forefront, but it's a location that actually is pretty close, and we felt really warranted some consideration and perhaps maybe the highest area, frankly. The other 2 areas are west of Taylor Road, those areas that are fairly close. So we ran some numbers as far as a cost estimate. We came up with, unfortunately, a pretty high dollar amount, about $500,000 plus engineering costs, more or less. These are rough numbers, so they could vary, obviously. So that's the information. I think the thought was, in my mind, if there's a desire to move forward, certainly this would be the time potentially to add it to the capital improvements program and maybe the strategic plan moving forward. But I think more importantly, I'll turn it over for any questions that you might have at this time. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rick, for that. Anyone wish to make a motion or have any questions or comments from Rick? Councilmember Edens.
Well, thanks for providing the additional segments that you flagged, because it really, for me, started with, from between Anthology and Taylor is where I felt that it was missing on the walk, and where I knew we had a car with an issue at one point that ran off the road. That doesn't mean it's not in the other area, needed in other areas. In fact, I was talking with Councilmember Rambo, and he felt that the area that you have on Exhibit A felt very close to the road. And I have not walked that particular segment. So I trust his judgment of that, which may mean that all of these would be appropriate to add in. And while I realize it's a high price tag, I mean, there's a reason why we have a 5-year plan and we take things in phases, or do some things 1 year, another thing another year, and another thing another year. So I guess my question is, does it make sense, especially if we're applying for any sort of federal funding, to apply for all of 3 projects together with a price tag? And because we're buying more guardrail, is there any chance that financially it makes more sense? Or does it make sense to separate these? You do one segment 1 year, one segment another year, and one segment another year in terms of future planning. Because I would put it into that's a question for the department, because it would affect my motion.
mean, will see if the department has any suggestion on the approach for that. You want it all in one or broken out?
Well, I guess my initial reaction would be if we're going to put in a federal funding app, maybe to lump it all and go for the whole 9 yards, frankly. At least
Okay.
the first time, maybe you try for the whole 9 yards, and if that's not successful, you back off and do something slightly less. But the next round of funding is probably going to be next winter, where we might be able to do it, or even maybe next summer, frankly. So it might be a bit before we have the opportunity to really put a funding app together.
Okay, so then I would feel comfortable with adding it to the strategic plan, potentially 2023, 2024.
Are you okay with that, Rick or Steve?
I mean, I can certainly make a note from my perspective to add it to the strategic plan. I'm not sure exactly how that process is going to play out moving into
I
next
think-
year, but
The mayor was wanting some sort of recommendation from the committee before it goes to the council on that, right?
Yeah,
Or does this automatically add it?
No, the
still
strategic
goes to
plan is the
council.
council
Yeah.
effort, so the council would, and certainly this committee can help provide that justification.
Yeah, yeah. To apply for federal funding, yeah.
I would say that with federal funding, Rick just lets us know when that application period opens up. Then we could, at that time, give the authorization to apply for it. And at the same time, work to get in on the strategic plan.
Mhm. Yeah,
So-
my experience is if it's not on the plan, then it
Well,
isn't prioritized or remembered or,
getting it on the plan, I think, can we just bring that at any point, or is that?
right. but-
The plan is a living document.
So, yeah, if we
if
authorize
the
tonight-
council agrees to add something, it can be added at any time. It's not a static document.
Okay, so with that, I would say then maybe a proper motion for that would be to recommend for the council to add to the strategic plans. We get that one going, and hopefully within a meeting or two of the council, if the council agrees, we'll get that added. And then I would think by that time, as Rick said, winter or summer, then we would be ready for the application process. Councilmember Clark.
Now, I have a question, and maybe we can't do this at all, but in running huge Special Olympics programs, I had a small budget for 100,000 athletes. So I had to get everything given to me. Is there any way we can let people or businesses sponsor a section and put a little sign there for advertising? Because people walk up and down that all the time, maybe a little small plaque, not anything big, but I'm just thinking of ways that we can kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Any opinion from the city administrator or director of public works?
well, I guess what I would say, the one concern that immediately jumps out is this is Route 100. So you have to keep in mind, this is MoDOT's road. It's not the city's road. Our trail is on there right away, essentially by agreement with MoDOT. So we are limited in what we can do, but I'm not familiar with a program where you've solicited financial contributions, frankly. Most of the programs MoDOT has are beautification programs, litter pickup programs where they solicit people to volunteer their time for beautification or litter pickup. But I don't know about the possibilities of strictly financial contributions. I'm doubtful that would be allowed, frankly, but I don't have any experience with it.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the city ever engaging in anything like that. Certainly can find out from other cities to see if, there's something that's happening there. I think the closest we get to it is our Memorial Bench program, where someone could make a donation for a bench along one of our paths. But maybe I can check with folks at the Municipal League when I attend the annual conference to see if anyone's had something like that. All right, so therefore, Councilmember Edens, I think, do we still have to get that motion on the floor or do we have it? Carla, okay.
I would like it to be a motion, yes. Mhm.
Okay, so for the record there, motion is then, as we stated before, proceed with recommendation for the council to amend this to the strategic plan.
Yes.
And then, should we just make the motion to
And
approve
and-
to authorize the application or wait till we get that? Rick, is that fine if we already okay it at this point, or do you want to just wait till you get more details?
I think either way is fine. When the next rounds of fundings when it comes due, I'll certainly be considering whether this would be an eligible project or not,
Let's
or
do it now.
reporting to you.
Okay.
Yeah, let's put it in the motion now.
All right, so therefore, Carla, do you have that motion? Can everyone understand it? All those in favor? Oh, second by Councilmember Farmer, thanks for that. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, moving on, next is the city consultant agreement for the tree inventory. Rick.
All right, thank you, council member. This last item, I think, has also been in front of you in a different manner previously. If you recall, last spring, we worked with Davie Resource Group and they were given a contract or they have an arborist consulting contract with us for 2022. And part of that contract included a citywide tree inventory, of which most, if not all of that cost was reimbursed through a trim grant that we received earlier from the MDC. We found out, and I think I mentioned this to you last month, we found out that the number of trees that we estimated was quite low, frankly. I guess the bottom line is we didn't really know how many trees we have. That's why we're doing the inventory, frankly. We thought we had around 6,000. Clearly we have well over 6,000 trees. So the prior agreement was essentially for an inventory up to 6,000 trees. We're needing to go well beyond that. So Davie has provided a second, essentially an extension of their first agreement. The price is exactly the same per tree. It's $3.65 per tree inventoried. We're estimating up to another 6,000 trees. We're going to pay for however many we inventory, frankly, not to exceed 6,000. So the request essentially tonight from the department is to move forward with another agreement with Davie Resource Group to complete or finalize the citywide inventory of trees at a cost of not to exceed $21,900. However, if you recall last month, we got a second grant from MDC, which Davie helped us with. So our cost to do this would be only $5,475, essentially 25% of the overall cost because of the MDC grant. So that is the recommendation, is to move forward with another agreement with Davie to finish up the citywide tree inventory. The cost to us would be the 25% match, or $5,475 to complete that work. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Councilmember Farmer.
I'll make the motion to go with the department's recommendation. I just have a quick question on that. We do a lot of work with Davie and they seem to do really good work. I'm just wondering, we have a relationship, obviously, with St. Louis County Police and some other things. Is it worthwhile to try to engage them as like a contract city arborist, so we don't have to do this every single time and just have like an amount of money for them? Or is every project a better way to go?
Well, Councilmember, we've essentially with Davie, we have tried to, and the thought was to put together a annual agreement with them to cover arbor services. And that's what we did earlier this year. And I forget the exact dollar amount, but it included about $20,000 for the inventory, which we hoped would complete the whole city. Now I'm coming back to you again, only because we vastly underestimated the number of trees. So that's been the mindset, was to present to you an annual contract for arbor services with Davie or whomever we feel is qualified to do that work. I'm not familiar with the county as folks on staff that would be.
Well, I didn't mean the county. I just meant in general. I mean, it seems to me with a name like Wildwood, we should probably have an arborist.
Oh, as
but-
far as someone on staff, that's been discussed and I don't know.
But I mean, either way, like, I just think, we do a lot of tree work. We spend a lot of money on trees. So I think however we do that is great, but I'll make the motion.
Okay, is there a second? Councilmember Hopper with the second there. Anyone else have any questions or comments on the motion? All right, seeing none, and all those in favor of the motion there, and that's for the department's recommendation there. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Okay, motion passes. All right, that concludes all for action items there. There are several items that I will not read out here, but for future agendas. Miscellaneous, anything under miscellaneous? Seeing none, then that would mean our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, October 11th. So we'll look for a motion for adjournment. Councilmember Farmer, second by Councilmember Clark. All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
When opposed or abstain, and the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.